Okay, so today we're going to be doing a review of these grow buckets. Last year I bought a package like this box that contained 10 of them. And this year I bought another one because they worked out well. I'll unbox it, show you how to assemble it, and then go over the pros and cons of using this versus just planting it right in the ground, using raised beds, a bucket that's not wicking, and a wicking bucket. So let's open up this box. Let's get this Home Depot bucket out of the way. And here are labels that you can put to label what you're growing in the bucket, and then the directions of how to do what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to put the directions off to the side, and so we got all these parts here. You've got these fill tubes. Yeah, they actually put 10 bucket inserts in this little box. That's not going to work out well. Put this over here. And you've got these little floats that are really nice. They sit inside the fill tubes and they tell you how much water is in the reservoir. It's one of the nice things about this system that you can tell just how much water is in that pot before it gets dry. So these are the 10 inserts that are stacked one on top of the other. And why don't we move this light down here and continue on down here. So you take your Lowe's or your Home Depot standard 5-gallon bucket. These cost slightly under $5 at the moment. And you take an insert like so, and you just put it down in the bottom. Now when you put this in, you want to make sure that you center this opening where you're going to drill an overflow hole in the bucket. So I already put a dot here where I'm going to drill my hole. So I'm going to aim this opening right in front of that. And then if you look inside, you can see that at the bottom it fills the entire bucket. You can see that when I put soil in here, soil will go on top of these slats. Like if I have another one here, you'll see there are holes here, and what else? Right, so water's gonna go, the soil's gonna go all along the side of this, and there's gonna be some leakage of water. This is not gonna be totally watertight where the front of it comes up against the overflow hole. So that, although the soil won't be able to get down into that chamber, the water will be able to get down into it and also soak the soil that contacts that area, and it will wick up into the soil. So that, plus you'll have about an inch of airspace between the top of the water level, even when it's full, and where the soil contacts. So the water won't get the soil won't get waterlogged. If you were to overfill this, or if it rains or whatever, and too much water gets in that, it will come out the overflow hole. So I'm going to take the insert out. I'm going to take a drill, and I'm going to just go ahead and drill this hole. Now it's measured up 3.5 inches from the bottom. I actually cheated a little bit and went 3 3/4. And I found that if I put the dot where it says on the E right here, in that little corner there, that's the ideal spot to put the hole. So I'm going to drill a hole there. And you want the hole to be 5/16 of an inch. So I started out with a small bit just to get a pilot hole. Now I'm going to put my 5/16 bit in to get it. You don't want soil plugging this thing up. It has to drain. So now I have my hole there. It looks like it needs to be deburred. So that plastic is hanging off the edge. Let me get this knife to cut the burrs off. There we go. So I have my hole there now, overflow hole. And again, when I put this insert into the bucket, I'm going to aim the front opening here so that the water can come freely out. Now the next thing I do is I take the fill tube and I just put it down right over the opening there. And I make sure it's seated well. And then I need my float that tells me my water level. So there are two pieces to this. This is the float piece that will sit on top of the water, and as I fill it up, it'll rise like so. Let me straighten that out. So this is the float part, and this is the indicator part. These things they're calling leaves. I'll take their word for it. Any case, this thing here just snaps together. So you just push it and it locks together. And then you can just slide this down in there. And as this thing fills up with water, this thing starts to rise. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these things. If you do it at 3.5 inches that they recommend, they say you'll have 4 leaves showing when it's full. And each leaf represents 25% of the capacity. With me putting the hole at closer to 4 inches, I often will, when it's filled, it'll go to 5. But anyway, you want to be in that ballpark. And to double check that, if you look to see where that hole is, and you see the height of the insert, you can see the shadow of the insert right here. So I've got a good inch between where my overflow hole is and the top of the insert. So even if I fill this up with water to capacity, the water won't contact the bottom of the soil at the top of the insert. There'll still be an air layer there of 1 inch. And that will protect from root rot. So I don't have the soil up here now. I'm not going to fill this up now, but I mean, you don't need me to do that. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. When you have the soil filled in there, when you first fill it, you want to put your water into the soil, not into the tube. And the reason for that is the soil needs to be compacted somewhat and go all the way down to the bottom so that it can contact the water and then wick back up. If the wick never gets started, the water might be airlocked and never wick. So when you first start this, you should be watering the soil initially for the first 1 or 2 times at least. Then after that, you have the option of either watering the soil and letting it go down and just watching this come up, or just pouring the water right into the stem. Now there's one more part that I didn't put on that I need to, and that's this stem. Or not stem, it's sort of like a cap. So you lift this thing up, you put the cap or the indicator through there, and then this thing fits back on here, and it's got a little cleat here that grips the top of the bucket. So I'm going to push this down onto it. Okay, so once it's all assembled, this is snug in here. The soil's all around it. It holds it in tight, and that's it. You fill water in, that thing floats up. So pros and cons. So the pros of using this kind of wicking bucket is, one, this indicator, because you can just glance at your bucket and you'll know how much water's in it. I've seen a lot of other wicking bucket designs that have fill tubes and reservoirs in them, but not that many of them have water level indicators on them. So even though you may have an overflow hole, so as you're filling it up, you know when to stop, because you stop when you see the water coming out of the overflow hole. You can't go to it the next day and just glance at it and know how much water's left in it. Now I've found that how often you have to fill this up is extremely variable. It can be as infrequently as once every 2 weeks if it's in a cooler season and you have a new seedling in here that you're just starting out, because that new plant, that tiny plant, isn't going to use much water. But if you've got an 8-foot tomato plant it's in August and it's producing a ton of tomatoes and it's like a big tree, and it's hot weather out, like 90 degrees or whatever, I've had to fill this up as often as twice a day. I mean, those tomato plants can, drink gallons of water every day, and even twice. You may need twice a day fillings. So that's why I have another video that I did where I actually put. So, I've used some drip irrigation things where I'll have a little emitter head in the soil and have that come on a couple of times a day, or once a day, depending on what it is, during the warmer season when I have larger plants and they're needing to be watered once a day or more. But as it gets cooler and I put different plants in there, or they're smaller, again, it doesn't require nearly as much work. If this were in the ground, you wouldn't know. I mean, you wouldn't know. You'd have to, I guess you could stick your finger in the soil to see if it's damp or whatever. But this is I think, more precise. The other thing that this will do that other methods won't do, like if you have just a garden plot in the ground or you have a raised planter. I have a particular situation in my backyard where I only get maybe 6 hours, 7, 8 hours maximum sunlight per day. On a good day. And that may vary with the season. I've got my house shading, I've got trees and shrubs and fences shading, other houses shading, and this gives me the opportunity to move these things to where the sun is. So, the portability of the planting location is a big advantage. The other good thing about the portability is if it's early in the season or late in the season and we have a cold snap, I have the option of bringing these things indoors overnight to protect the plants during a cold snap during the evening. If they're in a raised planter bed, then I have to cover them up with something and do it that way. So the ability to move the plants either to follow the sun or avoid the cold is an advantage of these things. They're big enough, 5 gallons, that you can grow pretty much anything. I grew tomatoes, peppers, squash, broccoli, cauliflower, and everything grew well. It was big enough. I think they're good. I wish I had a larger plot of land with more sun. I work with what I have. This gives me a little bit of flexibility to maximize my limited space, my limited lighting, etc. in my setup. So here are the grow buckets for my tomatoes. It's the end of March. It's still cold outside. There'll be another 6 weeks or so before I transfer my tomato and pepper seedlings into these pots. Now you can see on these Home Depot buckets, I painted them orange, and you can, let's see if you can make out Home Depot, the lettering, where I painted over, and it didn't cover 100%, but covered it enough that at least they're just orange buckets and not advertising for Home Depot. Now here's a bucket that's just got holes in the bottom. There's no wicking insert in there. Growing some romaine lettuce in it. And here I painted this one green, which I prefer this color. Trouble is, when you get scratches on it, like here, the orange sticks out, whereas if you paint this one orange to just cover the lettering and it gets scratched, you just have orange underneath, and it, in that sense, works out better for the long term. But this color, I think this is forest green. I have another one, moss green, which I just prefer that color. You can paint it whatever color you like, or just leave it unpainted if you prefer. These are the two colors I referenced in the video. You see the moss green. If you like something something that won't stand out so much, blends in with the green of the garden. And then if you want to match the orange of a Home Depot bucket, you buy Fire Orange. Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch. I hope you found this information useful. Thanks for watching.